Okay. Hello everyone. I hope you can hear me. Welcome to Nailsworth Climate Action Network's In Conversation With series. My name is Rachel Austin and I'm sort of co-chair of the Nailsworth CAN and tonight's compare, I suppose. Tonight we're talking with Beth, Jane and Sally from Stroud Community Seed Bank, which is a part of Down to Earth Stroud. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Tonight's chat will be recorded and available to listen to from our website. So if you do not want to be recorded, you can turn your camera off now. And I'll invite you to put questions into the chat for later, if that's okay, and we can answer them at the end. Just briefly, the aim of our talks is to get to know local people and organisations who are creating positive change in our community, and to open up conversations with the hope of inspiring others. So, on that note, let's start to talk about everything seed saving. I thought this was such a timely conversation to be having with Stroud Community Seed Bank, because not only because it's like the right time of year to be saving seeds, but also I imagine because over the past year we've all been stuck within our confines of our gardens, if we're lucky enough, and perhaps you know, we've got a bit more of an appreciation that maybe growing food is something that we can remain in control of when we're in the middle of a pandemic, which is frankly out of control. So I think also being in control of our seeds and growing is very much at the heart of Down to Earth. So firstly, Beth will make a quick introduction into seed saving, and then Sally, who's a co-founder of the Stroud Community Seed Bank and Down to Earth Stroud, will follow on and talk in some depth about that. And then Jane will follow on, and I've got that wrong way around, haven't I? Yes. Jane founded the Stroud Community Seed Bank and Down to Earth Stroud, and then Sally deals with outreach, which is really networking with and starting up smaller groups elsewhere within the community outside of Stroud. So take it away, Beth.
Thanks, Rachel. And don't worry, it's taken me 3 years to get to know various roles and who's who okay. And how it all works. So, hi everyone. So my name's Beth. I coordinate Stroud Seed Bank. And so Stroud Seed Bank it's a project which is a part of Down to Earth Stroud. So some of you might have heard of Down to Earth Stroud and others of you might not have. So Down to Earth is founded by Amanda, and she it's an organisation which makes land more accessible to individuals and groups in Gloucestershire, in the district, in Stroud district I should say, providing space for people to be able to grow, opportunities for volunteers. She's created various projects within hospitals, really inspiring stuff. So we're a project as a part of Down to Earth, which was founded in 2016 by Amanda and Jane, who we also have on the call. So I became coordinator in 2018. So I do quite a lot of the organisational stuff in Stroud, in the seed bank. And I help to kind of create its structure, I guess. So Stroud Seed Bank is set up with it's kind of sort of rings of seed guardians. So we have sort of core seed guardians, and then those that save seed and donate, and then those that are sort of interested and sometimes donate or come and join for some events, or so it's a very kind of open structure of engagement, and we welcome anyone who is interested at any level. So how we work, we are individual seed guardians all around Stroud who grow and save seed, and then we come together in the autumn, pool of all of our seeds together, have a harvest gathering, talk about our seeds, share stories, see what we've got, and then package them up over the kind of following couple of months, and then distribute them from January through to the spring or whenever they run out. And this year we've distributed our seeds in 6 different locations around Stroud, in community shops or community venues. The Long Table in Brimscombe, Chalford shop, community shop, Horsley community shop, Pagan Hill community shop, Loose plastic free, and the Trinity rooms, which has been really successful because we've been able to get our seeds out to as many people as possible around Stroud. So what else can I tell you about? We have an allotment plot, which is a down-to-earth allotment plot, but we have a bed that we are now saving seed on down there as well. So we have seed guardians coming and helping out down there, and we're also linking up with a project called Young Marketeers, which is engaging with school children, and so they are growing, and we're going to support them to save seed from that growing as well. Sally and Jane are going to be running some workshops with them. We also have a brassica project, which is happening in Horsley. Heather Slater, some of you may know her, is growing some brassicas on a larger scale. So that's a bit of a project, which is wonderful. And all of our seed is available for donation, so we want to make it as accessible as possible for anyone in the community. With the idea that the seed is available for our local communities, open pollinated, chemical free seed, and we have certain standards of quality that we're continuously sort of working on as well, to try and make sure that we have as quality seed as possible, whilst also making sure that the seed is accessible and people can grow and save seed and be involved in the project as well.
I ask you briefly, you say there's seed guardians, and then you have different sort of people who just contribute occasionally and stuff like that. Yeah. So to become a seed guardian, what does that mean exactly? Yeah, it's a good question. I often ask that myself. It's I think seed guardians, it's a lovely term for anyone that saves seed, I think. And is that somebody who sort of commits to doing that every year? Yeah, I'd say that well, I don't know, what would you say, Jane? Because you established the term at the beginning. With Amanda.
Yeah, Amanda and I have for a number of years been concerned about where you start with seed, and if the supply became difficult, where would we be? So in 2016, Down to Earth managed to put forward some funding, and we started up. And we started up. I've saved seeds a little bit, but not very much, and I had to do a lot of research. And our plan was that every person who joined us would have a basic workshop on seed saving, so a beginner's workshop. And I used information from Garden Organic, which is online, and there are other organisations like Real Seeds and Vital Seeds, lots of information. We put it together as a workshop. So I think I would describe a seed guardian who saves seed for us as someone who has gone through our beginner's workshop and knows how to save seed and when they're not doing it quite right. Because we try and do it as best we can. We're not experts and we're not commercial. So I think that's what I would call a seed guardian. Does that sound right? Sounds great to me. So you just mentioned seed saving workshops there. So is that something that anyone can join, Jane? Yes, the idea was that they would be free. They're about 2 hours long, and Sally and I have got 2 coming up next month, so in May, and I can't remember the dates, but there will be posters and it'll be on our website. And I think both of them are Sundays. And the idea is that we are quite technical. We talk about the naming of plants, the plant families and genuses, and what will pollinate and what will cross-pollinate, and how to have quality seeds so that you know when you're doing it right and when you're doing it wrong. And what we found was that people going on these workshops gained a lot of confidence, because that's the thing that seemed to prevent any of us from saving seed. We thought it was somebody else did that, the experts did that, and people have been saving seed for centuries, or we wouldn't have the seed in the first place, and we can do it. But there are a few rules, but try saving any seed, and it's just magic. That's the answer.
That's lovely, and I'm sure there's a huge sense of achievement when you do it right. And I suppose from your point of view, if you're putting them into packages and you're putting them out for donation so that people take them home and grow them, you have to have a certain standard. Otherwise, you want them to be true. You want them to actually come and grow again. So obviously that's really important to get that right. Yeah. But you're absolutely right as well. It's been going on for millennia. People have been saving seed. It's just we've lost our confidence perhaps in that.
Yeah.
I wonder if you want to tell us a bit more about the Down to Earth, sort of the umbrella organisation, Jane.
Right. I think Beth has covered it reasonably well. The idea is that it's for encouraging people to grow their own food. It is very much a food based, but they have professional gardeners that do all sorts of gardening. But they have a project at the Vale Hospital in Dursley, and that is allotments, and people come and volunteer as well. And it's promoting mental and physical health. So sort of acknowledging that gardening is actually good for you, not just the food that we produce, but the actual doing of gardening. And there's something else that is called gardening on prescription. So instead of having pills for depression or anything like that, the doctor will prescribe some gardening. And Churchdown GPs, they have a project, and Down to Earth are running that. They were on Countryfile, actually. If anybody watched Countryfile in January, it was lovely. I don't know whether it's still streaming, but that was great. I'm not sure. Oh, there's community gardens. So there's one at Selsley in Stroud, and we have our Ebley plot. So our bed in a small allotment is at Ebley, and the seed bank has been very successful. There was a food exchange at one point, but I'm not sure if that carries on. So, and that's the idea of people with excess fruit trees can donate the fruit to Down to Earth, and it will be distributed to other people who want it. I think, has anybody else got any? Sally, do you know much more?
No, I think you've probably covered it there, Jane.
Amanda is very she's so productive with her projects. She's always got something new on the go, and she's she just attracts wonderful people, and she's got so many volunteers, and so many people are part of the project. So if you have a look at the website and see and are interested in anything that she's doing, then definitely get in touch, because there's always loads that she's got going on.
So is it something, if someone's interested in either seed saving or I suppose social prescribing, getting involved in the kind of mental health element of it, or actually just developing their own group or subgroup or plot, finding somewhere to grow, is that something that you're always looking for people to help with? Volunteers or?
I'd say, as Amanda is always open to volunteers, definitely always needing and open to volunteers, and also really open to new ideas as well. As a seed bank,
because I'm sure she's got so much knowledge there to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if she can't help you, then she'll point you in the direction of someone else, you know, someone else who can, that kind of thing. So there's lots of network.
It sounds very progressive to actually be a provider of space where people can go and do gardening on prescription, because that's quite a new idea. I think there's been a lot of research behind that to sort of show how effective it is to get out there, and you know, it's really as effective as taking drugs. So that's extremely positive to hear about that. I wonder, Sally, if you'd like to just talk a little bit about some of the smaller projects you've been starting in the wider community outside of Stroud, because I'm really intrigued about that as well.
Yes, of course. Yes, because the nice thing with seeds is that if you get a few friends just who are growing locally together in this, you know, in a village or a small area, the seeds become locally adapted, which is something we haven't touched on just yet. So with our open pollinated seeds, which will come true to type, if you grow those for several generations, they will become locally adapted to our soils and our climate. So I think that's quite important from the sustainability point of view. The projects, we reach out from Stroud, so there's some new groups in Horsley, Chalford, Thrupp. We've had inquiries from Cheltenham, Gloucester, the Forest of Dean, Cirencester, and Berkeley, the Berkeley area. So the more people are becoming interested, and I think it's very much to do with the lockdown last year, and the fact that people have just had more time to spend in their gardens, so they're sort of taking the whole sort of growing to another level and thinking about the seeds themselves. And there's so many lovely old varieties. I particularly like heritage varieties, and some of them been going for a very, very long time. So it's a sort of skill that's worth renewing. And it's quite interesting going to these workshops, because I'm learning all the time. I've been gardening for a very, very long time. I've been saving seeds as well, but you always learn a little bit more, and you think, oh yes, that will improve something, or I didn't realize why that worked and why it didn't. And so, you know, I don't think you have to be worried about failure either, because you can see that as a positive, you know, why something didn't work. And particularly with climate change, we get this really weird weather. We're sort of thrown from one thing to another. At the moment, we've got a very cold drought. I mean, you wouldn't expect that in April. There should be a warming, quite moist months. We should be getting our April showers, and it's just not happening this year. We've had this several previous occasions through the last decade, and it sort of throws our ability to grow things as we would normally think. You have to sort of be able to adapt. And I think this is a big thing. If at the moment I'm very keen to sowing more seeds, but I know it's too cold, and I don't want to start planting seeds if I then can't get them out into the garden once they've germinated and have got to a certain height. And I'm holding seedlings back at the moment. It's very irritating, but you know, you've got to actually work with the elements, and this is what it is just at the moment. You can always extend the growing season with things like cloches. I use my greenhouses to start things off primarily, because then we've got the other aspect of global warming, where during the summer, sometimes greenhouses can get so overheated that the plants will actually stop growing. So that's another aspect. So very often plants do better actually planted in the garden. So I think it's getting to know the particular range of plants that you really want to grow. I mean, we've all got favourites of what we like to eat. So this is what, you know, it's all to do with this cycle, really. And I particularly like peas for saving seed, and beans. They're very easy to do. Very often they're self-pollinating, although they do respond to insects, particularly bees pollinating them, and that produces a much better set.
All right.
I also like really colourful vegetables.
Go on
Personally,
then. Most colourful vegetable.
Oh, and blue podded peas.
Oh wow!
Have
Do
you
they
tried?
keep their colour when you boil them then?
No, they don't actually.
What's in the way?
Great disappointment. But
I suppose you've got rainbow chard, haven't you? That sort of says it.
yes. And then
Oh.
there's the most beautiful coloured flowers on things like the runner beans. So you can obviously got the scarlet runners. There's also the lovely painted lady, which is a bi-coloured bean. So you've got a red and a white, and then you've got something like sunset, which is a lovely salmon pink.
So you can enjoy the flowers as well as the fruits.
Yes, so you can have a very ornamental vegetable garden as well. And some of these varieties are incredible. Sorry, some of these varieties.
I was just going to say, do you think you have to have a big plot to grow your own veggies, or can you manage with something much smaller, like, you know,
Yes,
not a windowsill, maybe that's probably stretching it, but yes. Can you grow in flower pots, for example, or containers?
Of course you can. Tomatoes. There's a lovely old heritage variety called where we are, a golden sunrise, which I've been growing for recent years, and it is the most gorgeous tomato, and that was raised in 1896. So you see
what I like. I love the names as well.
Yes, yeah. And it's delicious, absolutely delicious. But so you can garden on quite a small area, you know, even a balcony. So it's and I think the important thing, the aspect, is to understand microclimates. You know, whether you get sun all day, or where you get partial sun, or it's in deep shade. There are quite a few vegetables which will grow in shade. Things like the leafy greens are very good. They're much better in shade very often, particularly when we get these very powerfully hot, dry summers that we sometimes get.
So you've spoken a lot about climate and how that's something that affects your growing and that you really notice. And do you think, I mean, it seems fairly obvious, therefore, that, you know, if you take up growing, or, you know, you get your younger generation involved, it's a way of starting to really notice things like the climate and how that affects what we can eat and what we can grow.
There's a big movement in micro veg. So you only grow quite small seedlings, and they're full of nutrition. But you do need an awful lot of seed in that respect. So that I find quite interesting. And you can, through the winter, you can sprout seeds.
Yes.
And they're very nutritious. So you don't actually have to have a garden. You can do them in quite small areas.
Very true.
Yeah, I noticed someone had asked what varieties and what we grow, or what seed we save, and I think I added up, there was 57 varieties of flowers, herbs and vegetables that we grow, we save. I think I'm right, but majority is veg. Am I right,
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I could share the link to our catalogue as well, and then people can have a look through that and just see what's there.
Right. And what we started off with was the seeds that could be saved more easily, which are the ones that are self-pollinating, or what's called sort of inbreeding. So they don't cross-pollinate quite so much. So Sally said about peas and French beans. Runners are a bit more promiscuous, so we can't sort of save the runners in quite such a good way. So that's the way of knowing what you're doing, what will cross-pollinate and what won't. And the ones that we save from are called open pollinated seeds, and they come true to type. So whatever you sow, it will be more or less what it says on the packet. I have got a packet somewhere. So we have our packets. These are our seed packets that we've, I've gone quiet, haven't I? These are the seed packets that we have developed. And some people might wonder what an F1 hybrid is. And
you need to explain this, definitely.
Yeah. There's a lot of the commercial seed companies will have developed what's called an F1 hybrid. And there's two aspects to them. One is that they are two varieties that are bred together to produce a particular offspring. And the F1 is that's the first offspring from those two. So you can get F2 and F3, but this is F1, and they're always stronger, more vibrant, and have particular characteristics that we're looking for. So a particular size of tomato, or a particular crop, how it harvests, whether it's harvesting all the time. And it was developed, F1 hybrids were developed very much for commercial horticulture and agriculture, because they tended to have a harvest time that was a block of harvesting. You could go in with vehicles and mechanize the whole thing. Whereas open pollinated, because they're true to type, they will ripen at different times over a period of time, which suited market gardeners much better, that they didn't want it all at once. So the historically, the F1 has taken over. But the other aspect of F1 is that if you can save the seed, but you won't get what the parent was. So you won't get the same plant at all. You might not get any vegetable or produce from it at all, but you might get something really wonderful. You might not. So on smaller sites, that is more of a risk. You wouldn't really want to take a lot of space with a saved seed from an F1 hybrid. You really want to go back and buy the seed every time. So that takes the sustainability and the self-reliance away. You've got to go back to the company to buy that seed again. Whereas with open pollinated, it's like you've been given the gift of the future of your own seed. And
Jane, can you explain then how that, because I know that you'll do this better than me, links in with genetic diversity and increased resilience through that?
Yes. So the open pollinated true to type are not genetically confined. They're very much wider genetic diversity. So you'll have some that will be okay in some years if it's wet or dry, or the climate is difficult. The genetics is much wider than the F1 hybrid, which is just these two parents that have been brought together. And we haven't talked about genetic modification, but that's another aspect where the genetics has been so reduced that you cannot do anything other than have that seed. So you can't save seed from genetic modification, even if you'd want to, whereas you can from hybrids. So what's happening commercially is that all our seed diversity is being reduced over the centuries, over the years, over the decades, not centuries. And there's seed banks across the world. We're not the only one. And it's wonderful to know that there's small community groups across the world, and they're all looking at increasing this genetic diversity that we need in order to adapt to not only our own local environment, but for climate change, like Sally was saying. Does that answer that?
Well, it seems to make sense. You basically got very hardy crops that you'll get, and they're much more likely to survive in a local climate. Is that basically right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, cool.
So we've
that's a
actually
bit
been,
like...
sorry, I was just going to mention that Jane introduced the idea of a land race.
Oh, yes.
To the seed bank. I don't know if you want to talk about that as well, Jane.
Okay. Land race, so that's LANDRACE, is a variety, we tend to focus on vegetables, a variety that has been saved for over 10 years in the same area. And so it becomes totally local seed and adapted to that particular area. And it will often look different from the original seed that it came from.
Mm.
But it will still have a name. You're not producing a new variety. You're producing a plant that is adapted entirely to your environment. And it's just, I think we've got two, haven't we? We've got the thrup parsnip, which Amanda started well over 10 years ago, and we don't know what the parsnip was to begin with. It might have been something like white gem, is it? Little gem, something like that.
White gem is a parsnip.
Oh, right, or tender and true. It might have been one of those, but we don't know. So we called it thrup parsnip. So it's not a new variety, but we've given it our name because she's got an allotment in Thrupp, so that's where it came from. And Cherokee Trail of Tears, that's getting on for a few years, hasn't it? So that's a French climbing bean, which has quite small rounded pods, and it's lovely. It's a lovely bean, but it also dries and makes a very good dried bean. So that's the idea of the land race.
And we have a dream of being able to produce enough Cherokee seeds, beans that we can provide Stroud with dried beans for the winter.
Yes.
And to grow to save seed from. So we'll see.
That's a real big ambition. I was looking here at some of the questions that are coming up, and one of the questions was about, if we wanted to set up a group in Nailsworth to do growing and seed saving, would we, if there were 6 people, could we do it like that and become part of your outreach groups?
Yes, that's indeed. In fact, I do a sort of little introductory talk to small groups to get you going.
Perhaps that's something that Nailsworth can help enable. That might be something that we could.
Yeah, that would be.
If we were to get those 6 people, then we could perhaps organise that with you, and that could work really well. I'm assuming that everyone would have to have their own garden, and that's how you do it, and then you sort of come together. And do you then contribute to the big autumn harvest in Stroud, and then they sort of get distributed out in that way?
Well, you could just keep it to Nailsworth. You could start exchanging seeds within that little seed circle, as we call them.
Oh, okay.
And if people within that group have got a favourite or several favourite seeds that they'd like to grow, and then they can exchange those with other members of their circle who are growing different seeds.
Yeah, I mean, would it be a good idea to start off with, because you were saying you've got 57 varieties within your Stroud Community Seed Bank. I mean, how do you do it? Do you distribute those out to all your different guardians, and then they continue to grow those same varieties? Is that how you do it?
I think we all have favoured varieties we like to grow, and so we will then donate surplus seeds from those varieties.
Okay.
Because it depends on your situation, what you like growing and eating, basically.
And you just have to set aside an extra few plants in order to find this.
Yeah, not necessarily even many extra plants, because something like tomatoes will readily give you lots of seed from just.
Yes, I suppose one fruit, tomato, has got 100 seeds in it or something. So that's quite. I bet they aren't very easy to harvest, though. I can imagine there's a certain knack to harvesting a tomato, because it's quite a wet fruit, isn't it?
Oh, you've absolutely nailed it. Yes. So there's two different types of seeds. We've got wet and dry seeds, and a good technique with the wet seeds is to remove the seeds, so you can eat the flesh of the tomato. You can have it both ways, really, and just to add a small quantity of water to the jelly-like seed coating to the seeds, and leave it to ferment between 3 and 5 days. Sometimes it does look quite yucky, but other times I've found that it actually doesn't look unpleasant at all. And then after that time, you just simply rinse the seeds in a fine sieve under the tap. The jelly substance disappears, and that's a germinating inhibitor. And then you just lay the seeds out to dry. I use baking parchment, because then the seeds won't stick to that. Allow them to dry quite naturally in the sunshine, on a windowsill or something like that, and then store them when they're perfectly dry, and they're ready for the next season's sowing. So it's
That's amazing. I suppose it's really important to make sure. Yeah,
Sorry,
they're totally dry, and then you won't get them rotting in a paper bag somewhere, because I can imagine that could be a mistake. But
Yes.
that's quite some dedication, though, to the cause. I think having to ferment the seeds and spend all that time. But yeah, that's brilliant.
Oh, it actually only takes minutes. It's just, because you're doing a little bit of the process over several days. It really doesn't take very long. You'd be surprised. I'm surrounded by.
That's even more encouraging. Yeah.
Yes.
I was going to say, just as well, with the Nailsworth group, with the 6 of you potentially wanting to start up, I guess the structure is kind of like the umbrella of Stroud Community Seed Bank and all the networks as a support, and kind of you can imagine little boroughs of communities doing their seed saving, and then we can provide workshops and come to us if you need any specific support for anything, and various education, and then having that kind of seed saving within your community group. But then also if there are seeds that are wanted that you haven't managed to save, then having that communication between each community group as well, and as well if we're growing the same seeds. We haven't quite done this yet because this is all quite fairly new, but being able to mix them all together and separate them out again, so we get that kind of genetic diversity of the seed.
Oh, I see. So you'll mix together a thrup grown parsnip with a parsnip from Nailsworth, and you end up with more diversity. I see. Okay. Have you guys found, maybe this is more about actually finding land, there seems to be a scarcity of allotments and things
Yes.
like that, certainly in
Yeah.
Nailsworth.
Yeah.
How do you, as a group, go about, persuading landowners to perhaps hand over their land for growing?
Can I just add to that? There is actually a right still for 6 people to get together to demand that an allotment is given. There's still active law in that.
Right.
For land rights.
Certainly, that's something you could maybe take up with the town council, but I just wonder whether Jane or Sally might have any advice on an approach to take.
Well, I think from my point of view, I'm lucky. I do have a garden. I mean, it's very important to me, so I made sure I bought a house with a garden. But I've recently acquired an allotment, and I've been on the waiting list for a very long time. This is in Tetbury, and I'm very pleased to have it. I mean, it's great being with like-minded people, but there is quite a strong issue that there is not enough land. And I know with the Tetbury allotments, a lot of them have been subdivided, and they're possibly sharing with 3 other people, so that the plots become smaller and smaller. Just so that they've got a small patch to work. I think there is quite a big issue on this.
So maybe that's something that Amanda might actually be able to advise on, because she's been, really proactive in finding these plots for Down to Earth, and she might be the person to get in touch with about that later.
I know there's people, I think it's called Landwise in Stroud, who are trying to link people who've got a garden that needs, that's too big for them, and who are willing to allow someone to grow food in their own garden. I'm not quite sure where that works in practice. It sounds good in theory, but you've got to be able to have access and privacy and all those kinds of things. But that is one way of getting land, that if there aren't any allotments. But Sue, you're right. There is a law that the local council must provide if there's a group of 6 people who demand it. Yeah. It's a difficult one in Nailsworth because of the land is so, you haven't got any nice sort of flat bits really, have you?
Someone just mentioned Thistledown on the chat, and actually I did hear that they were interested in some growing happening up there, so it might be worth getting in touch with them and seeing what their plans are.
Yeah, I think there's obviously going to be issues there with land and privacy and that sort of thing, because often people are able to grow on the weekends, which is precisely the time when those potential donors of sharing their garden might also want to be sitting out with their guests and stuff like that. So I guess it's just tricky in Nailsworth, like you say. There isn't much communal land available, and the allotments are very much in use. But it might be worth a try. Someone's saying about community orchards and common land in Nailsworth. Yes. Well, there isn't much common land in Nailsworth. There is the common in Minchinhampton and everywhere else, but I think that's not traditionally not been used for growing, more for grazing. So maybe we should take it up with the National Trust as well. There's a challenge for us.
Well, I have to say at one point the National Trust were actually providing allotments, so I'm not sure where that's gone currently, but yeah, they might have something.
They are a big landowner around here, aren't they? They've got the Woodchester mansion as well, and all the other commons, so yeah, that might be an idea to take up. I don't know if someone wants to take that challenge. Just seeing where we are, we've got sort of nearly the end, I suppose, but not quite. It's really question time here, and one of the questions that I've seen is, has anyone managed to grow asparagus from seed?
My mum did.
Was it very delicious and successful then?
Yes, it was. It was. She had the same plants for decades and decades, and it was gorgeous. It was very bountiful. Yeah. The thing about asparagus is that you have male and female plants, so not all of them produce the red berries,
Right.
and they're tiny, like little beads.
They're
They're
beautiful.
very beautiful, aren't they? I think.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
perfect spheres.
Yes.
And
And
asparagus is actually quite a lovely thing when it goes into flower and into leaf, isn't
yes.
it?
Yes. Very
feathery.
ferny. Yes.
And a bit spiky, if I remember.
Yeah.
But that's really nice to know. I know that asparagus is notoriously difficult to do. Okay, someone else here is saying about storing seeds. So how long can you store seeds? I imagine that's a fairly long time, but you might know the answer to that. And what conditions do you need?
Right.
Who are we going to go with?
Go on, Jane.
I'll do. So the different seeds have different seed storage life. So, for instance, the parsnip really needs fresh seed. So you wouldn't keep that, certainly no more than 2 years. You might be able to get a crop in the second year, but it's usually the first year, and then you have to ditch to let them go. Other crops will last for 6 or 7 years, but it's best to have fresh seed, and that's what the Stroud Community Bank tries to do, is have seed that is saved in the year that it's being distributed.
Yeah.
And we're not allowed to sell our seed. It is by donation, but definitely by donation, and it's illegal for us to sell. You'd have to have commercial seed license to sell.
Another thing that we were doing is that if people get seed from the various different locations, then they don't use the packet, then the whole packet, they can bring back part of that packet that they haven't used for other people. So it's it can go around as many people as possible.
Frozen, Beth.
Oh, have I frozen? I don't know how much of that you heard. But yeah, just so that if you don't finish the packet of seed that you've taken, you can bring it back to that same place that you bought it and leave it there for next people, so it can be accessible for as many people as possible, and know that there will be new seeds next year. So we're not all hoarding lots of seeds and then getting more and more each year, and then they're going out of date and we're not using the seeds.
Yeah. Well, I think I'd like to add, Beth, is that fresh seed, which we provide from the Stroud.
You've gone quiet as well.
Yeah, Sally's just frozen, so we'll get her back in a second. I'm sure.
I can say about the storage of seed. We try and make sure that we dry the seed as well as we can, not overheated, but dry as naturally as possible, so that it doesn't rot. And everything's done in like jam jars, or I tend to do mine in envelopes, and then I know that it's not going to get too damp. So we try and be as good with our seed quality as we can be, and then it'll last longer. Yeah.
So just another question for you guys. I think I managed to get the locations of many of the outlets for your seeds. Charlford Community Shop, Brimscombe, Long Table, Horsley Community Shop, Pagan Hill Community Shop, and there must be a few others. I'm sure we will list these on our website, and they're probably available on your website too, but which ones have I missed out there? Someone wants to know where to get them.
There's Loose Plastic Free Shop in Stroud, the Trinity Rooms on Field Road in Stroud, Horsley Community Shop, and Pagan Hill Community Shop.
We're going to do on May the 1st, Saturday, May the 1st, we have a stall at the Stroud Farmers Market to distribute some of the last seed that we've got. And we'll have some plants as well, but that was a sort of our final stall, really, wasn't it? I think, yeah. So if anybody would like to come and see us there, that would be great. You could come and talk to us.
That sounds ideal. Face-to-face talking.
Yeah. And the workshops that Sally and I have got planned for May. Certainly the 6 people from Nailsworth who want to start up a seed saving group, that would be a wonderful place to start if you'd like to join up. Yeah.
Great. So we need to, we'll put those onto the recording as well on the website, so we can make sure people know what those dates are too after this. So
I don't know if there's still the question there, but I saw that Isabel was trying to speak, and I didn't know if you had a question, Isabel. I can't see you anymore. Oh, yeah.
No, I was, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I switched myself off because my connection was very unstable. Yeah, my question was about community gardens, really, because in Nailsworth we have community orchards and community gardens dotted around, and but there's no list. I mean, we don't know who created them, or because we can't get allotments. The town council doesn't have any allotments and says there's no land available for them. So I was wondering how we would contact those community gardens and
they
and start
definitely
talking
so
about having patches of plants.
Yeah, that sounds mysterious that you don't know who sort of runs the community gardens, but they're active, are they? You know that they're active in.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I think that Sue Reed on the town council has a full list of all the community gardens and growing projects, because that's very much her area. So Sue Reed is a town councillor, and she has a list of everything. So if we can, perhaps maybe we can help you know, get her to share that list, and maybe that could go on to Nailsworth Can as well, because obviously that's something we like to try and do, is gather things together and become a resource for people to look for stuff. So that could be quite useful. I might just plug that there is a Blossom Walk.
Well, I can see you read.
Starting on the 3rd of May, I think. And that does go around all the community orchards in Nailsworth and Horsley, between Nailsworth and Horsley. So there's a map in the parish magazine at the moment.
Is there a possibility when Ecotricity moves from the Forest Green Rovers, that someone could try and get a bit of land for allotments there? Just an idea.
That's worth proposing, isn't it? Definitely. Community asset, something for the community. That would be really good. Yeah, I don't know quite what the plans are for that, but if we get in early enough, perhaps it's a good idea.
Mm.
Ah, Sally, you're back.
Yes,
Hello.
I don't know what happened. I disappeared.
You were just about to say something really pertinent and then you froze. So do you want to fire away? She's frozen again, right?
Yeah, she looks very happy though.
Which is great. Oh dear. There's a new message. Okay. Final question then really here for the room is there a specific preference in approach to planting and or farming, for example, organic biodynamic methods?
Always organic. Yeah. We do advocate that all our seed is saved from chemical-free plants. Yeah.
We can't say that our seeds are organic because obviously as individuals we can't be certified organic. It would be impossible to do that, but we say chemical free as a
Oh, there you go. Chemical free and basically organic, but just not certified as, yeah. I hope that answers that one. Cool. Yeah, so if there aren't any more questions from our chat here, I just think I'd like to say thank you so much for telling us all about Stroud Community Seed Bank and Down to Earth Stroud, and I really hope that it's inspired people to get involved and start saving their seed, even if they only do it within their own gardens. It's really going to make a difference. And I think it's obviously something that's been going on just for millennia, and you might just want to swap some seeds with your neighbour, because that's still going to be a really good thing to do. Just make sure they are not F1 hybrids, and if possible, nip to the local community shop and pick up a packet of seeds from Stroud Community Seed Bank, because I think there still are some available, and it's really brilliant to support this cause. Donate generously, I'd say that's really what to do. So thanks so much, Beth, Jane, and Sally, who's probably not here, but she is around. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us and for listening.